Hey, we're live.
We are live. I
Is
got.
this?
I have a new space.
Yeah, how about that?
It's still in the process. I was telling you a little bit on the pre. I'm gonna flip it, paint it, but it's in the process. So um,
You got some stuff behind you. You're gonna hang on the wall.
I got some fancy stuff. I'm not gonna be up at your level quite yet. It's gonna take me a while to get there, but
I mean, this is the bar.
yeah, that
This
is the
is what I'm
bar.
saying. So, is this the launch of season 3? Is that a thing?
I think it's officially right. I mean, yeah, we'd have to. Did we start? Did we start the official launch of season 2 in the off season? I can't remember how it was. I think we had the Portillo's things that kind of gave us a nice launching off point at that point. So maybe this is like 2.1 or maybe 3.0 or we'll have to think about it.
I don't know, man. I only know is we ended last season. We got to say goodbye to that difficult record to cover. And hey, guess what's happened since we last talked? Uh, the Bears, unbelievably, and a surprise the Warren Sapp, by the way. They have committed to Justin Fields.
Yeah.
It was, touch and go there. Warren Sapp, a couple other people were, Bears might Bears might trade Justin Fields and take somebody at number 1. Glad that garbage is over. They kind of put that to rest.
I listened to the. I'm freezing again. Does the audio freeze out when my video cuts, or does the audio work?
Audio seems okay.
Okay, so I'll just keep talking. I may look like a moron in the video here, but I'll keep talking whether it happens or not. Like I said, I'm in a new space, so maybe have to get a different router, a little more boosted the signal here. But I listened to that snippet of the Warren Sapp thing, and he's hearing it from people in Chicago, is what he was reporting. Like, first off, it's Warren Sapp. Oh my God, this is ridiculous. But it's first off, it's Warren Sapp. I mean,
known NFL insider Warren Sapp.
This guy doesn't have any inside scoop. I mean, I'm sure he has connections, but
Sure.
He's not Adam Schefter. He's not Ian Rappaport. He's not breaking news. So the fact that he said that, I think that's him just wanting to say something to kind of generate some clicks and some listens for the show he was on. I think that's what that boiled down to.
Well, I'm happy that we finally got confirmation, even though we've been saying there wasn't going to be any chance of that throughout the offseason. But wait, hey, what are you going to do? And then the other big thing, well, a couple of other big things we'll just talk about. Tom Brady officially calls it off, right? He's going to actually walk away this time, right? I mean, the look in his eyes looked pretty much like, yeah, that was maybe the wrong decision to come back and play again. But so he's done.
He had a good individual season as far as some of the numbers look, but overall, that just wasn't the same. Tom Brady wasn't the same Bucks offense. So, he had a lot of stuff, personal stuff going on this last year. It was a rough year for him. So maybe it's the best bet. I can't see him making another flip and coming back like he did last offseason. That would just be ridiculous. But who knows? Stranger things have happened. And of course, Aaron Rodgers is I'm sure has something to say about the news, because he hasn't, been in the news lately. So I'm sure he'll have something to say.
Well, I think I came out right away and said, this actually makes it pretty clear to me that Aaron Rodgers is going to play next year. Now, whether or not they're going to move him or he's going to play in Green Bay, I don't know the answer to that, but there's no way that Aaron Rodgers is going to share a Hall of Fame ceremony stage with Tom Brady, because Aaron Rodgers' resume isn't anywhere close to Tom Brady's. So there's no way that he's not going to have that day just be all about him, be the lead story. So he's going to come back and play at least another year.
With the Jets, though, maybe you think? Or...
Whatever. I don't know. I don't care. I mean, if you want, honestly, I don't. I'm not really worried about Green Bay if they stick around, whatever, with Rodgers. I think it hurts them financially if they stick with him another year. If they do move him, hopefully it's not for much. I hate to get them healthy in terms of draft capital, but if he goes somewhere else, he goes in the AFC, good riddance. Like, get him out of here. The New York media will chew him up and spit him out.
Yeah, I mean, the Green Bay media was pretty nice to him, through his time here. And it's funny, the last couple of years, because I live in Wisconsin, so every now and then I will pop on the Wisconsin, sports talk just every now and again. Like if there's a game on with one of the Chicago stations, I'll pop in the one from Milwaukee. And it's kind of goes up and down. There's a few times where they're after some bad games, they're talking about it's time for him to move on. And then, of course, this last season he had an up and down season. He wasn't Aaron Rodgers of old, so if he comes back and the Packers are, a little strung by the cap, maybe he doesn't have the weapons. Maybe he doesn't have as nice of a season as most people expect, and maybe the Bears, what a lot of fans want to see, a lot of fans want the Bears to take out Rodgers while he's playing. I don't care. I just want him gone. I want him out. I want the Bears on top. I don't care if it's because of the Packers lose their quarterback or because whatever. I don't care. But some fans that means a lot to them.
Yeah, I've heard that argument too. Like, well, I want the Bears to beat Team X at full strength. I want all their starters playing, and I want to prove that we beat them. And I'm thinking, you think the Eagles fans are like, man, I really wish that Brock Purdy was playing that whole game, so we could have got a good NFC Championship game. I don't feel right about advancing to the Super Bowl, beating a team that had their quarterback hurt in the first drive. No, no one's going to remember that garbage. Like, take the wins. I'll take blowouts. I would love that. And my heart would like it too.
So do you think it's going to be Philly or you think it'll be KC since we may not have another show till after the Super Bowl? Who's your pick in that game?
I think it's Philadelphia. I think a lot of people are just kind of slow to embrace them. I know they're the favorites now, but I think that they've just been slow to being embraced because the narrative coming into the year was like, well, we don't really know much about, is Jalen Hurts going to be the guy? And, he wasn't this high first round draft pick or anything like that. So I think that when he's been in and healthy, which was most of the year, he missed those 2 games, but when he's been in and healthy, that's the best team in the league.
Yeah.
So I think it could be a good game, but I think it's either a good game or it's Eagles by 2 scores. Like, I think that they're that good. I think they can roll up on you. So and I kind of like the idea of Jason Kelsey going out. Like, it feels like this is probably his last year potentially, going out beating his little brother in the Super Bowl. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think if they win, it's always a thing. If a team wins, some of those guys that are older, it's always good to think they may go on top. And I mean, Jason Kelsey's still playing at the top level. He's still probably one of the best interior linemen in the game today. So I like watching him play. He's one of those guys that when I do watch other teams, he's a guy that I'll make sure I kind of watch because he's fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it looks like we've got our guest in the green room.
Nice.
So, good stuff. Why don't we launch here, and then we will bring in Greg Gabriel. Let me make that mistake off the
We'll
podcast
cut that out
part.
when the podcast comes.
Yeah. Well, I'll pronounce it right when we do the podcast. So let's get started here. We're gonna bring in Greg in a minute. So let's start our podcast recording here as I write a timestamp down.
Nice. That's why you're the pro.
Welcome to Bear and Balance. I'm Jeff Berckes, a writer for Windy City Gridiron, and I'm joined by the editor of that fine website, Lester A. Wiltfong Jr. Lester, first show of the off season for us. Very excited. We've got a lot to talk about, and we've got a great guest today.
We do. I'm excited. We'll get to him in just a second here. It's a great time to be a Bears fan. I mean, this is the hope season coming off the 3-14 season, of course, is just brutal. But, we had a good time watching the Justin Fields' his development. Some of the young players look nice and, number 1 draft pick, about $100 million in cap space. Hope is there for Bears fans right now.
Yeah, absolutely. You had EJ Snyder on just last night, right?
Talking
about the Shrine Bowl. So you got to talk to my other podcast partner about his experience there. He's there with Brett Coleman, bootleg guys. They're doing a lot of really good stuff. Another guy who's doing a lot of really cool draft stuff for Windy City Gridiron. And of course, his work on Barroom is Greg Gabriel. And we are really thrilled to welcome Greg Gabriel to Bear and Balance. Greg, welcome.
Well, hi, how you guys doing? I finally see your faces. We talk on the phone, we email each other, but I've never seen anybody's face. So Good to see you guys.
Technology is a beautiful thing. I'm very tech deficient for the most part, but yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good to finally have a chance to meet face to face. Like I said, we've talked on the phone quite a bit, obviously email, text all the time, but it's good to kind of get on here and talk about it because you have a great perspective. You're down at the Shrine Bowl, you're involved with the Shrine Bowl, and it's a great time. Are you excited for the Bears' upcoming off season?
Yeah, you think you have to be, but having sat in the office for as long as I did, I you see stuff on Twitter and not that I'm trying to be obnoxious or anything, but it's not close to reality.
Yeah.
And I think right now, as of today, there's 94 million in cap space because there's guys, draft choices that outplayed their contract, so to speak. So they get incentives added. So they're making more money in the last year of their rookie contract. So that took some money away, and they're going to have to extend some players that they want to extend. But they also got to save money for some big extensions down the road, including Justin Fields. And speaking of Justin Fields, some of these rumors that have been going around in the last week that, the Bears were trying to move him. Now, I believe there could be some teams that may have called and say, is he available? But for them to say, we're thinking about chopping, it was the most ludicrous thing I have ever heard in all the years I've been involved in this. Why would you even think for 1 second that after you've got a quarterback that has been through 2 years, and really this was his rookie year all over again, being that it was a new offense. And when you think about it, he's played in 3 different offenses the last 3 seasons. Yeah. Ohio State, he's in one offense. Then he comes here and he's in Nagy's offense. And now he's in Getsy's offense. So it's like he hasn't settled in yet. And plus they brought in a bunch of new players last year. He had to get on the same page with them. It's a very difficult offense to learn. So I think all they were trying to do this year was really lay the foundation. But you got knuckleheads around the league that are not around the league and in media and stuff that, oh yeah, they might trade him. He didn't do as good as they wanted. So what? So they can take a lesser guy this year? Because there isn't a quarterback in this draft that isn't anywhere close to what Justin Fields was when he came out 2 years ago.
Well, I tend to agree with you on that, Greg. And I would say that we don't want to say it too loud because we do want some teams to be interested in moving up into that number 1 pick. But we'll get to that in a minute. I want to talk about the Shrine Bowl. So some of our listeners may not be familiar with your background. You were a longtime scout. You've been in a lot of rooms, a lot of buildings. So you bring a really great perspective. Been writing some great articles on Windy City Gridiron. So if you haven't checked those out, please go to Windy City Gridiron. Check out Greg's byline. He's been doing great work all year, really shedding a light on a lot of things that most of us don't have a good background on. But I want to talk about the Shrine Bowl specifically because you have some level of involvement there. So I want to ask you that up front. Talk to us about the Shrine Bowl, what it's about, and how you got involved.
I really got involved a year ago, close to 2 years ago. A friend of mine, Eric Galco, and Eric, I've known Eric for years, but he worked in the XFL like I did. So we were part of XFL 2020 that because of the pandemic didn't last too long, 5 full games, but there was a full year of work leading up to those 5 games. And Eric was the director of player personnel for the league, and I was the director of player personnel for the Washington franchise, the DC Defenders. There was no general manager. The head coach was the so-called general manager, who for that franchise was Pep Hamilton, a name that everybody should be familiar with, being that he was on Lovey's staff here as a quarterback coach and a longtime coach both in college and the league, and I think a great coach myself. But anyway, when Eric got involved, for the 2022 East-West Shrine, Eric got involved in heat of running it. And they moved it to Vegas after last year's game. Then the league got more involved. The league has taken over or has basically named that game as the the college all-star game that they are backing. So the Senior Bowl has held that for years and years and years. And it's nothing against the Senior Bowl. I think that, the way I hear it, the league wanted the Senior Bowl to move. They weren't about to move. And so the league said, well, then we're back in the East-West. And that's why you saw full coaching staffs there. Now it's going to take a couple years for the rosters to change hands, so to speak, because of the tradition of the Senior Bowl. But the roster this year was pretty good. But Eric asked me then, I did some scouting for the East-West last year. Then this year he asked me to be on the board of advisors with about 4 or 5 other people. So constantly having, phone conversations, just trying to make the product better and get better players. So a lot of that had to do with, getting a hold of agents, dealing with agents, and where it used to be college players couldn't have agents. Well, technically they can't have a contract agent right now, but they can have an agent for NIL. And a lot of times the guy who's doing the NIL stuff is going to end up doing his contract too. So college players now have agents. So the whole atmosphere of college football has really changed in the last couple of years because of NIL. The league wants to tie the East-West game in with the Pro Bowl week. They did it last year. Last year, they got a late start. They didn't have much of attendance. The game kicks off right around now, I think.
Yeah.
I think they sold 25 to 30,000 tickets for that game. Now, going back, and you guys might not remember this because we're going back into the 80s. But, the East-West is the oldest all-star game. It's been going on for almost 100 years. You're going back to 1925 was the first year. And I didn't know that, by the way, until like 2 days ago when I looked it up. And I'd been going since 1985, I think, was my first year going out there. But it used to be out in Palo Alto at Stanford, at the old Stanford Stadium. And it was, the Shriners sponsored the game. And it was like a West Coast Shriners convention. And they had that old Stanford Stadium could hold 75,000 people, and it was packed. There were 70 to 75,000 at that game every single year. And the quality of the players was excellent. And then they moved the game out of Stanford. They had it up at the baseball stadium, the new baseball stadium, for a year. And it just the people that were running it just weren't doing as good a job promoting it. It started to go downhill. So, and it moved around. It was at about 4 different places over the course of, say, the last 15 years or so. And now it's hopefully settling in Las Vegas and tied in with the Pro Bowl activities each week. And it'll come back as a real good all-star game for players to attend, and especially with that NFL involvement now.
Yeah, I think that's key. If the NFL's involvement now, I think they want that to be the premier college all-star game. Like, when I was younger, like you said, it was the top all-star game, and the better players would go there and it turned into Senior Bowl. But if you had a choice to go to Mobile, Alabama, or go to Las Vegas, I'm going to Vegas.
What's funny is, and it ended up not working out, but originally, based on records, the Bears and Houston were supposed to coach this. And so nobody thought that Lovey's staff was getting fired, especially given the fact that, a year ago they had an African-American coach. He got fired after 1 year, and nobody in their right mind thought there's no way they're going to fire another African-American coach after just 1 season. And so, in fact, I had, Eric was talking to the Bears. I was talking to Houston. Eric had talked to the general manager. They basically had agreed to do the game. And I was talking to Pep a lot. I didn't really talk to Lovey. But the whole reason being is the top senior quarterback in the draft this year is Will Levis from Kentucky.
Yeah.
So we were working on getting Levis to play in that game and be on the team that Houston coached. And because, Houston has a quarterback need, and they'd have a week with him, and it would really give them a a jump start on the evaluation process of him. And, Pep had talked to his agent. He had talked to the kid. We hadn't had a deal quite yet, but then they got fired and all that went down the drain, and the Bears decided not to coach in it. And it really had nothing to do with the game. It was really the importance of this off season. And if you're going to coach in that game, you got to send your whole staff out there. And it's not just your coaching staff. It's your personnel staff, or most of your personnel staff. You got all your video people. There's a lot of people from Hallis Hall that would have been out there. So it's like basically it's like being on the road. You're taking your team on a road game, and they're out there for a whole week. And Ryan did not think that was the best idea for the Bears this year, being the importance of this off season, because that would take away from, having as many people as he wanted down at the Senior Bowl, would take away from coaches who weren't going to be at the Senior Bowl doing evaluation on free agents, et cetera. So he just thought the time could be more useful if they weren't involved this year. And to be honest with you, I can't blame them.
I think you bring up some good points and hitting a couple questions that we had for you. I think the first one, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, and I saw you had a tweet earlier today where you're saying, people are overreacting to what they're seeing in these all-star game practices, right? And I kind of want to ask that question because I think it's pretty natural for people to get pretty excited about, watching one-on-one reps at these all-star games, because you get to watch this guy against that guy, and they're not used to watching practices, right? Like this is something new and all that. So put it into context for us. How should the fan that's at home and following these all-star game practices and games, how should they really take that into account when they're evaluating these prospects for who are potentially going to be in the draft and on their favorite team?
Well, I'm going to answer it this way. And number one, I get where draft analysts and the fans are coming from, because this is their opportunity to you get TV tape or whatever. Some people might be fortunate enough to get real game tape. But a lot of people go down to Mobile for that game, and there were a lot out in Vegas, earlier this week to watch the practices for that. But it's their first opportunity to really see people live. But here's the reality, and the way the pro people look at it. It's just a small piece of the puzzle. The most important part of the process is what they already did from September through November, and if they were in a bowl game through December. What they did during the season. Some of these kids now, they haven't played football in over a month. And in some cases, if their team wasn't in a bowl game, they haven't played 2 months. And they might be getting ready for the combine, but they haven't played real football. And so they're a little bit rusty. You use it. Actually, one of the most important things for the pro scouts and stuff, it's not the practice. And first of all, the game doesn't mean anything. It's what you see in practice that they're looking at, but it's getting the interviews in. Because at the combine, you're only allowed to interview 60 people. You got 335 people at the combine, give or take a couple. And you always have a huge number of underclassmen that are in the draft. And underclassmen can't play in the All-Star game. So who are you going to interview at the combine? As many of the top underclassmen as you can, because it's your first opportunity to see them. So what do all the teams do? They send a bunch of people to these different All-Star games, and there's like 4 of them, maybe 5 of them now, because the Hula Bowl is back. And how about the Hula Bowl was in Orlando this year? That makes a lot of sense. But
I'm waiting for it to go back to Hawaii, and then I'll try to get credentialed.
Anyway, you can spend more than 15 minutes with a kid, and you can get a lot of work out of the way. So now, come a month from now when the combine, or 3.5 weeks from now when the combine starts, you don't have to worry about interviewing that guy. You got it done. And you can move on to the underclassmen. We used to have an old saying, and this goes back, I started with the Giants in at the end of 84, I was with National Scouting for the 84 season and then the spring 84. And even when I was with the Bills part-time from 81 to 84, the saying was at the All-Star games is a player can't hurt himself at the All-Star games, but he can help himself if he has a real good week, because you don't want to, he could have a bad week and part of it could be for what I said just a couple minutes ago. He hasn't played football in 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks or whatever. And so you're not going to downgrade him for that because he had a sloppy 3 days of practice. Now, don't forget, none of these guys are brought together. They've never been with each other before. So everything is new. It's a new tailored down offense. They've never worked with these guys as teammates before. So it's all just put together really, really quick. You have a couple meetings, you have a few practices, maybe 2 intense practices. So how can you overreact to what you see in that little bit of time? You don't. So, but if a kid really jumps out, and let's say you catch things in practice that you didn't see during the fall when you were making school calls during the fall, then you can say, hey, wait, I missed that. So now let's go back and look at some more tape, and maybe there's find out why you missed it or whatever. Where the guys that really benefits are the small school kids, because you're seeing them play against better competition. They could, you take an FCS kid or a Division II kid or whatever, and there was a Division III kid that was invited to East West from Quincy College here in Illinois, but he could not. He was at the game, but he couldn't play. He's got a boot. He's got a broken foot or something. But he was there to be interviewed and weighed and measured. Big kid that dominated like Division III competition. But if he could have taken part in the practices, you would have seen how he was able to compete against guys who played at Power 5 type schools during the year. And then you're seeing if he really is a prospect or he was just the big fish in the small pond at Division III.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of small school guys that are really showing out now, and that's what these staffs are, especially with the East-West, because like you said, it's not the same level as the Senior Bowl quite yet. So you're looking for those diamonds in the roughs, those day 3, some undrafted free agent types. So the Bears, you said they didn't want to commit the whole staff, to the whole week down there, but quite a few of the staff was there. I think I saw a picture of you talking to Ryan Poles at some point on Twitter. So there were quite a few members of the Bears staff there, or was the whole staff there in the early part of the practices?
Well, Ian was there. Ryan was there. Jeff, I think pretty much the whole scouting staff was there.
Yeah.
Or close to it. And they stayed through Monday morning and then headed down to Mobile. But the weather, I don't think they were all there Monday because the weather sucked in Las Vegas. It was cold and rainy. It's in the desert. It's not supposed to rain, but it was cold and rainy on Monday. And so I think some of them got out of Dodge a little bit early and went down to Mobile because they had interviews available even though there's no practice on Monday, there were interviews available Monday afternoon in Mobile. But they were there. I had a nice chat with Ryan for about an hour, but I can't really say everything's only because then you're betraying confidences, and then
Hey,
when you get an opportunity to talk again, you say, hey, screw you,
No. We would never push that.
But I'll tell you, it was a very, very interesting conversation, and I think he really opened up. He gave me a lot of information that'll, I got a pretty good idea of what he wants to do.
Yeah.
What you want to do and what you can do are always two different things, because you're competing against 31 other clubs. And right now, reality is, and a lot of it's free agency. That comes first. What happens in free agency is going to depend what happens in the draft. People want to have all these mock drafts, but they're meaningless until you get through that first big phase of free agency. And depending on how they're able to acquire players and or lose players in free agency, that'll have a lot to do with what they do in the draft come the end of April.
Absolutely. I know that you're involved on the board level of the Shrine Bowl. I know you're invested in a lot of these guys that came to this game. You're there, you're talking to people. coaches, GMs, scouts all across the league. Are there some guys that kind of popped a little bit this week? That, like you mentioned, guys that can help themselves, right? Some of the smaller school guys getting a chance to go against some of the bigger school guys. A couple of
I got a rosters here, but I hope I got the right ones here.
Okay.
Because what I do is when a guy kind of jumped out and did something in practice that jumped out, I just marked his name on one of these rosters I have. And then and I don't have one of these in front of me. It must be in my other notebook. But anyway, that told me I got to go back and look at more tape, because it just that he did something that I like. But let me see. I can give you a few names here. I got both rosters here. Yeah. Okay. Looking at the West, and I'll just give you a few. Okay, Demario Douglas, a wide receiver from Liberty, jumped out. There's a little running back that's real quick from UCLA, Alan Casimir. He jumped out in practices. Ibrahim Mohammed from University of Minnesota jumped out. Another running back, the cornerback from Minnesota, Terrell Smith. I didn't really look at the DBs that much. Along the line, bear with me, guys.
Oh, that's a good show name. This is real time processing information here.
I mean, the good thing about this is the Bears need help everywhere. So all these guys you're mentioning are guys that could, presumably be in play for the Bears because they need help up and down the roster.
Baldonado, an edge player from Pittsburgh. PJ Mustafer. He would be a one technique in the Bears defense if they were to draft him. He jumped out a little bit on the other team.
Greg, could Sam Mustafer block PJ Mustafer effectively in practices? How would that go? You got him one-on-one. Who you got your money on?
PJ.
Yep. Okay.
He's I don't know if he's bigger. He's 315. Sam gets killed. Okay, what Sam is he's not a starter in the NFL. He's a good backup.
He is.
Yep, absolutely.
That was put into a position that he had to play because of injuries, and ended up having to play, I think, all but one game and all of last year. Okay, now next year, if he's on the 53, I think it'll be strictly as a backup. Now, I think the coaching staff likes him because he's very smart, and he can come in off the bench and he can hold his own. And I think, let's be honest, I think the second half of the season he played a lot better than he did in the first half of the season. But is he what you want? That's what the answer is that, you want to upgrade at certain areas along that team. And I think that, the biggest position right now going into the offseason along the offensive line that they want to upgrade is right tackle. And that's like number one. I'm not sure about center because I know they really like Patrick. And is it fair to say, well, Patrick didn't play good? Okay, granted. But he's also playing guard. He was also hurt, and he's not a good guard. But if you look at his tape from 20 and 21 at Green Bay when he was their starting center for, I think, started 14 games in 21 for Green Bay, he played damn good. So are you going to close the door on him because of an injury-filled season, or are you going to, bring him back and say he's our center? And that's for the coaching staff and the front office to determine. My guess is that they're going to say he's our center next year, and and they want to have probably more competition, whether that's Sam Mustafer or the kid they drafted last year from Illinois, or they bring in somebody else this year. That remains to be seen. We'll find that out over the course of the next few months.
Yeah, it seems like they should upgrade there on the interior. They got Tevin Jenkins at right guard. I thought had a really nice year. He had some injuries he's battled through, but over at left guard is Cody Whitehair, and he's got a big cap hit number, and he's getting up there in age, and he's plays a little inconsistent. You never want to get rid of a guy unless you have a replacement ready for him. But
Right.
do you see Cody Whitehair as a guy that still has a future on this team?
Looking at his contract, I think you're gonna. I don't think these guys want to waste money like they spent last year doing that,
Yeah,
cleaning house, and I kind of found out why in the course of my conversation, and I think that if he wasn't in the plans, he would have already been shipped out because in most cases, those guys are gone. And what I do believe, and I might be going fast forward here, is that say in free agency, unless the guy is really healthy, throughout his career, doesn't have an injury background, so to speak, that most of the players he's going to go after are going to be kind of young. If he hits a guy that's 30 or 31, he's going to be a healthy 30 or 31. So he can get a good, say, 3 years out of the guy because he doesn't want to bring in people that are broken. And he's not going to get, he like Patrick has been healthy his whole career, but he got hurt this year. He doesn't want that to happen. Now, sometimes you can't help it, but if you get a guy that's already been injured 3 or 4 times in the course of his career and missed a lot of time, why are you going to bring him in?
Yeah.
It just, you're just putting good money after bad or bad money after good money, to do that. And I just don't think he wants to do that. I think he wants to get young, but he also needs leadership. So there could be an opportunity for some 28, 29-year-olds if they've got a lot of gas in the tank and they're healthy.
Yeah, so like Javon Hargrave from the Eagles looks like he's going to come due for a free agent contract. The Eagles may not be able to afford him. He's 30, right?
He's 30, yeah. And I don't know. I haven't looked. First thing you can go to Pro Football Reference and it'll tell you how many games he's played, how many games he started. So, and that's the first thing. But you don't always know about the injuries. And some of that shows up just on the reports that go out every week. If he's missing practice, if he's been out or limited in practice, and you keep track of that stuff. You're getting it all the time. So it's documented when you have in your pro scouting files, you have all that documentation on every player in the league so that when he does come up for free agency, you've got a file, exactly what the problem was. And they got to say, okay, he's limited because of a knee, limited because of an ankle now. And then you can do some research to find out exactly what it was.
Yeah, the Bears are gonna have like we talked about a lot of money, and if you look at those top free agents, the franchise tag will be in play with some of these teams. We'll kind of see what happens. I know with Washington, with Payne, the 49ers with the right tackle McGlinchey. There's a lot of guys that would fit. Like I said, Bears need everything. So it's going to be interesting to see how they attack this offseason. And they kind of see who's available for them, see who doesn't get re-signed. But
right, and that's going to be the key too. Is who, like Washington. Right now, you look at their cap and you go, how are they going to be able to do it? As far as Daron Payne goes. But then you look at the guy who's getting the most money, Carson Wentz. They can cut him, and there's not a penny they lose on it. There's no cap hit at all, because the other teams that had him before have already taken care of the bonuses. It's just like $25 million comes off the books the day you cut him, and he's not coming back. So right away, that could give them enough money to re-sign Payne. But then you look at it too, where the other defensive tackle is going to have a cap hit of around $18 million. The other defensive end is coming due for an extension. And Young, who was the first pick in the draft, and he's been dinged up, He's going to be due to get extended. And it's like, how much money do they want to put into the defensive line? Now, they're on record saying we want to keep him, but wanting to keep him and keeping him and just be, you got to spread your money around. And do you want to throw all that money into one position? And that'll be one of the interesting things that we'll find out over the course of, really going to find out before March 15th. So over the course of the next 6 weeks.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see where the Bears are able to try to put some of that money into. They got to free up from their teams. That's kind of the first step. Well, as I understand it, every offseason you evaluate your own talent. You decide whether or not you're going to let them walk out the door. You're going to bring them back. We talked a little bit about Cody Whiter. Cody Whiter is under contract. That's a different conversation. That's, can you replace him with somebody else? But the one guy that I think that people have a lot of strong opinions on, and that's David Montgomery. Second round pick, he's a fan favorite. He's a guy that a lot of people like. Then you got that other side of things where people are like, you don't pay a running back second contract. His yards per carry isn't very high. You can replace his production. You can get better on the open market, or you can maybe go into the draft and recycle. And then there's a lot of Khalil Herbert fans. So where are you at with the David Montgomery question?
If it was me, if I can get him at a reasonable price for a 2-year deal, and maybe I'd stretch to 3, but not more than 3, I'd do it. A lot of it, he's real valuable in the locker room. Okay, he has had some injuries, not debilitating, but he has missed some time. But his game meshes well with Herbert's, with the other running backs, with Khalil. And he can do things that Khalil can't do. He's a better pass blocker. He's a better receiver. He's not the open field runner. He doesn't have the home run speed. So they complement each other really well. But you want to be able to afford him, and you don't want to overpay him. So I think, again, I'm speaking where I come. If I can get him, I try to do a 2-year deal, and maybe you can have a 2-year deal and an option. Of course, he's going to want a 4-year deal, but you can let him test the open market. He may find out that, it's a running back and he isn't going to get anything, because you talk to people around the league and that's what they go, remember there was talk going into the trade deadline that he could be a guy that would be traded. And I was talking to some friends of mine around the league, and they go, why would they want to trade him? They can't get anything. He's a running back.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the, and you'd see on Twitter, you might be able to get a third. And in reality, people are saying, well, you might get a 7th, because he's a running back. And now then people bring up, well, Barkley might be a free agent. Well, I worked for the Giants for 17 years, and I've got a lot of friends there, and I talked to their director of player personnel out at the East West, who I've known for years. And he is a Mara, even though his last name is Mara. His mother is. He said, no, we're doing everything we can to bring him and the quarterback back. So they're both out of contract.
Yeah.
So that's like plan number 1 is bring both of those guys back, and they got to find a way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably not the best year for Montgomery to be a free agent running back, because you already mentioned one of them. Miles Sanders is a free agent. The guy from the Raiders is a free agent. So there's some guys out there. The Pollard with the Cowboys. So there's a few guys that probably are higher profile than Montgomery. But like you said, those intangibles. His ability, in the passing game. That's key. His ability to pass block and then the leadership in the locker room. I mean,
that the leadership in the locker room means a lot, because you got to, and sometimes it never gets spoken about, but how key guys are in the locker room with their teammates. It tells you a lot about whether you want to bring a guy back. Sometimes it can mean overpaying him $1 million or something because of his value in the locker room.
Oh, that's good stuff. I'm wondering what else you have in store for our readership coming up on the NFL draft. We got a lot of really fun stuff coming up. We're at the All-Star game's happening right now. The Shrine Bowl's happening right now. Senior Bowl's happening here soon. Then we're going to go on to like the Combine. We're going to, all that hype leading up to the draft. Do you have any plans for us, the readers of Windy City Gridiron, or what you're going to share leading up to the draft this year?
Yeah, what I want to do is, like I've been doing, is kind of when things come up, walk through the process. What's it about? How things really happen. In a few weeks, I'll be going down to Indy for the combine. So I'll write some stuff. Okay, what do you get out of the combine? What's the purpose of the combine? And to the average fan, it's the workout. And to the team, the workout's really the last thing. It's because you've always, let's say the workout is an exam. The pro day is the makeup day. So, but you can't make up the medical.
Yep.
And that's important. The combine came into existence. The first one they had was in 1985. It was out at Arizona State. And that was the first combine as we know it. Before that, there was 3 different combines going on, and they were like over a period of 3 or 4 weeks because you had 3 different scouting services. There was Blusto, National Scouting, and then there was a combine that probably none of you guys ever heard of called Quadra. And Quadra was San Francisco, Buffalo, Seattle, and Dallas. So they each had their own little combine. And then in 80, some players would go to 2, but wouldn't go to the 3rd. And, so it was just kind of crazy. And then they all got together and said, wait a minute, let's just do this all together. And everybody's going to be part of it. And that happened for the first time. And I was at that one. And it was at Arizona State. They picked Arizona State because it's not supposed to rain. And the chance of rain in the month of January, Harry Buffington was running National Scouting at the time, was supposed to be like 8%. In 2 days it rained. So there goes your 8%. And then the following year, it was at New Orleans. Is actually after Super Bowl, the week following Super Bowl 20 that the Bears won. And then the next year was at Indy, and it's been there ever since.
Just the St. Elmo Steakhouse just kept everybody coming back, or what's the pull of Indy? Is it just inside, or
the league wants to put it up for bid, and the teams, the personnel people, fight it because it's the location of Indy, the location of. Have you guys been down there for the combine at all? Okay, no. So you know what it's like. You don't need a car.
It's a nice city. I've been to the city a few times.
Yeah, when I was working here for the Bears, I drove my car, parked my car at the hotel we were staying at, and I never saw it again for a week. Because you walk everywhere, and everything's no more than a 5-minute walk away, 10 minutes at most. And so you just don't need your car. It's just so easy to get around from one hotel to the other, to the Dome where they have the workouts, to the Players Hotel where they have the interviews and stuff. It just makes it so simple where if you take it somewhere else, now all of a sudden things are going to be spread out. And now you're going to have logistical problems, and that's not what the other teams want.
Yeah, it's a nice city. I mean, it's in the Midwest. It's right there in the center. I mean, it's easy access. I would like for it to be, a little closer to where I live in the Chicagoland area, somewhere up in this area, or maybe Milwaukee or something like that. But it's nice. I know it's Indianapolis. I've been there a few times. It is a nice city, and I can't see them ever leaving. I mean, what's the point if the league wants it there? I mean, the leagues get what the league wants. That's why the East West is getting at that level now where they're able to compete with the Senior Bowl. So it's good stuff there in Indy.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, and if you talk to the general managers or personnel directors at every club, they're going to not one is going to give you a nay vote on Indy.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff, Greg. I really appreciate you taking the time to come hop on, talk Shrine Bowl with us, talk Bear stuff with us. Really love the work you're doing. Again, I'm going to give it another plug. Go read Greg's stuff on Windy City Gridiron. It's invaluable. You'll learn so much. And of course, want to let you plug your podcast as well, where people can go and listen to you, even though it's not on the Windy City Gridiron podcast channel. But feel free to plug where everybody.
Well,
can hear you.
it's Gabriel Talks Football on the Barroom Network, and once a week. And actually, now it's going to be every other week during the off season. But it's same as what we're doing now.
It's good stuff over there. Yeah.
Yeah. We just talk, and we do get some questions, from people they're live. They type them in, so you get some, and I like that feedback. I could do Q&A all day. I think that's a riot. I almost wish you could hear some voices instead of having it typed in, but it is what it is. I don't know if we're that far into the technology yet. And when it comes to technology, I'm the wrong guy to talk to. So
we'll see if we can get some radio hit spots. People call into and leave a message and say, "Hey, Greg, want to hear about so-and-so," and then we can play them for you, and then you can answer those. But what we'll do, Greg, is we're gonna end the podcast here. And then we'll have you stick around for just a couple minutes. And we've got some people that are on our live YouTube that have typed in some questions for you. We'll run through those, but that's a YouTube special. We'll end the podcast here. Lester and I will come back probably in a week or two, and we're going to try to bring on more guests. And I think we're going to try to go through the Bears roster, try to hit up some free agency stuff. I'd like to get Brad Spielberger on to talk about free agency, what he's seeing in the landscape, and what the Bears have at their disposal, how they can use and structure some of those contracts with that $95 million. But any final words, Lester, before we kill the podcast here?
Am I supposed to stay on then for these?
Yeah, just
stick on. Okay. Well, we got some questions here for you. So yeah, stick on.
Okay.
Just wrap it up, JB. We're out of here.
All right, man. Sounds good. All right, guys, stick with us, and until next time, bear down.
Nice. Yeah, we
usually just wrap up the pod, and then I know when to cut it, and then I'll do the editing, and then we kind of hang out with the people here. Which I saw our Lions guy. We got a Lions fan.
Okay.
I don't know if he comes and hangs out with you, but this guy.
Well,
Don,
they have screen names over there, so I don't know.
This guy's name is Don Burr on the YouTube screen name. He comes in once a week. And he just says Detroit versus everybody. And then he usually leaves. And then we didn't see him for weeks and weeks and weeks when the Lions were doing bad. He just disappeared on us. And we were worried. We put out an
APB.
We put out APB. We called the local hospitals. We want to make sure Don was okay. And then when the Lions started winning again, he came back to life.
He did come back. Yeah.
He came back to life. So that was, we were very happy that happened. But
does that mean he's a front runner?
I just think he just didn't, I don't know. Can dish it out, can't take it out. I'm not sure, Don. But we got a question for you, Greg, from Brent Murphy here. Says, in Greg's opinion, is there a big drop off from the Will Anderson, Jalen Carter line that everybody's talking about down to Wilson, Murphy, Brees, and Van Ness, etc.?
Well, there's a couple of those guys I don't like very much, but that's my opinion. It's a good question, and I'm going to answer it this way, and then I'll give my opinion on a couple of these guys. It's not how we see them, and the draft analysts see them, and they might have them 1-2, 2-1, or whatever. It's how the Bears see them. Are they fit? Now, the most important thing is, do they fit the scheme? And that's, one of the things I was talking to Ryan about that I, will share. And I just said, because the defensive scheme is pretty much the same scheme as we had when I was there with Lovey. A little bit more advanced on a technical point, but as far as the player profile, and I specifically asked Ryan, I said, is your player profile similar to what ours was? He says it's almost identical. And I think at one position on the defense, it's a little bit different. Otherwise, it's the same thing. So I know exactly what they want because I scouted for that system for 9 years. And in fact, I wrote the profile. So I know that the type of player you're looking for a certain type of player at right end, a certain type of player at left end, certain type of player at the 3-tech, certain type of player at the 1-technique, etc. And so, knowing that, it makes things, easier for me to talk about players in the draft because I know if they're fits or not. Okay, so now going through some of those names. I mean, Anderson and Carter are very good. I got one question on Carter, and that is, he can be an extremely dominant interior defensive lineman, but you don't see it every play. There's plays he takes off. Now, some of that is just familiar ground with defensive linemen. They come with a little crap in their neck. It's part of the personality. Their personality is like the exact opposite of an offensive lineman. And sometimes you got to take it for what it's worth, and you got to live with it. Forget we took Tank Johnson in the second round. Everybody knows he had a little crap in his neck, but he was a damn good football player too. So there's things you're going to do with a defensive lineman that you're not, or accept with the defensive lineman that you're not going to accept at other positions because of the position that they play. But you've got to do your research. So on a guy like Carter, you say, okay, you got to do some deep research and find out, okay, what's going on up here, what's going on in his heart, to know about his football character and his desire to be great, to really see, is there the talent's there? Does he have that ultimate desire to be a dominant pro and a great pro? And if you can say yes to that, then it's easy to draft a guy like that. If you're unsure, you can't take him. And I'm not speaking necessarily him; it's any player, So, but that's just the one question I have. If it's me, I'd probably take Anderson over him because he can rush the passer, and that's one thing they did not have this year. And I know he's going to be pretty good at that. And Alabama listed him at 243, but I've got friends of mine that made school calls, and he played at 251 most of the year. I'll be interested to see what he weighs at the combine and what again weighs at the pro day. And they do a bod pod at the combine. So what his body fat percentage is, because that's huge with the Bears. The guy, they got Jimmy Arthur is the strength coach, and he was on the staff with Rusty Jones when I was there, and they got the exact same philosophy, and percentage of body fat by position is very, very important. And so, if Anderson is 251 and he's 18% body fat, and I'm just throwing numbers out there. Okay, then he's too fat, and so then when you look at his lean weight, then you say, oh, because his lean weight's really about 220, and then he's just too light. And so then you would, and again, I'm just throwing a dart at the screen,
Sure, yeah.
Just trying to explain it. But so you got to know those things, and that's all part of what you find out, at the combine. But, you look at the numbers he's put up like 27 and a half sacks over the course of the last 2 years. That's pretty good numbers. I mean, nobody else in college football has that over the period of the last 2 years. Now, Wilson, good player. I think he might be the next outside guy, but I'm saying that. I don't know how they have him. I know Ryan went down there to see him because it was in the paper that he went down there. I think it was a mini bye week or the bye week. He went down to Texas Tech. They specifically had it in there. So he's an interesting player. He's so frustrating to watch, and it's nothing against him. It's how Texas Tech used him. I mean, half the time in passing situations, he's dropping into coverage, and you're like screaming at the tape, going, "Why are they doing this?" Because he's a natural pass rusher. So I think when you get him to our level, he's going to end up. The numbers are going to go up. And he's a big guy. He's going to probably measure between 6'5" and 6'6", and he's going to be 270 plus. And there's people that think he's going to break 4.6. He's going to really run well. So he'll be an interesting guy. Now, Murphy, I'm not a fan. And I know everybody's got him up real high. And here's why. He's that edge player who gets no sacks. What good is he? What's the primary
yeah, what's fit on the Bears, right? Fit on
what's
last
the
year's Bears team.
primary job of an edge guy?
Yeah.
He can play the run. And does he have the potential? Yeah. And the guy you can compare him to, because he's going to, from what I understand, he's going to really, test out of the park. He's going to hit a home run with his testing. But the guy went number 1 last year from Georgia. He didn't get sacks either. And now look what did he do with Jacksonville this year? 3.5 sacks. So it correlated. So if you want, you want a guy to come into our league and put up some numbers, he better have a history of some numbers. And I'm not saying the guy's not a good player. I'm just saying, in my opinion, he's not the best fit for a guy that can come off the edge. They're looking for guys, and that defense, your defensive ends have to be able to be consistent pass rushers. And you go back to when I was there and look at the deep, we had Alex Brown, we had Ogunleye. Those guys could rush the passer. But you also had guys on the interior that could rush the passer with Tommy Harris and stuff. So,
did Alex Brown have the biggest hands you've ever seen in your life, or is that Marty Booker?
I don't remember what either one of their hands.
All
I know is Alex number 1 is a great guy.
Yeah.
And about every third week during the season, he'd walk up into my office and he'd go, "Now tell me again, why did I go in the 4th round?" It like drove him crazy.
He kept that chip on his shoulder, and
it really did.
He had a real nice career for the Bears. That's good.
Mm-hmm. And he wasn't a big guy when he drafted him. He was 248 pounds. I don't think he played at more than 255. So if you look at a guy like Anderson, Ogunleye was only 260. So you look at a guy like Anderson, he'll probably, again, depending on what his muscle mass is and what his body fat is, he'll probably play at our league, if he plays here, between 255 and 260, which is fine.
Yeah.
Got another one.
But where were some of those other names? You guys took the thing away there.
I was sorry. I was trying to move us.
Bracey was in there.
Yeah, Bracey. Yep.
Good player. Now, if he's not a fit to play the 3, he can't play it. If he can play anything in this scheme, it'd be the nose or the 1, because it's not really you're not a pure nose. You're not playing the 0. You're playing the 1. Playing in the gap between the center and the guard. He could play that. But I don't think you're going to use a top 10 pick for a 1 technique. It's just not going to happen. So I don't think he would be in the mix to be a draft choice at that particular spot.
J2K has asked multiple times about Kobe Turner. And so I figured I would ask your opinion. Does he fit this?
I don't. That's a guy I haven't done yet. So who's? I'm going to have to answer that one later.
I think he's at the Shrine Bowl. So I think
okay. I still haven't done him.
Okay. I mean, you only have to watch 300 players or whatever.
I know.
Right? I mean, it's totally fair. Lester, we need to get you in the bod pod. That sounds like that sounds like something we need to.
It's a very humbling experience.
I would break the bod pod.
It looks like an egg if you've ever seen one.
Yeah,
there's a window, and you sit in it. You sit in it for about 2 minutes, and air circulates around it, and it picks. There's a lot of science involved. That's way above my head, and it is like within, probably 1/100th of a percentile of hitting your body fat exactly. And it tells you, okay, let's say, a guy's 260. It tells you the percentage of body fat he has. So what his lean weight is, meaning his muscle weight, and his fat weight. And when you go back, and Rusty was very scientific, he goes through, he wants a certain amount of body fat for every position. Offensive lineman can be in a certain range. Defensive lineman can be in a certain range. And I'll give you an example who was a great player and probably one of the few that were out of the range. And, you want your defensive backs to be single digits, preferably 6 to 8% body fat. Like Tillman was like 6.5% or something like that. Very, very lean. So everything on him is muscle. Then there's Nate Vasher, and he was the exception to the rule because Nate at his best was about 13.5. And, every time you get on Rusty go, he can't play. He's too fucking fat. Excuse me. and then, but he just could. It's just no matter what he would do to get lean, he just couldn't do it because he wasn't. I don't think he weighed more than 190 the whole time he was here, but his body fat was just high for the position, did not affect his play at all. So he was the one exception that I know of.
Well, our one of our big supporters, Chris Armstrong, says that her father-in-law was a Shriner and helped put together the annual game in Illinois, one of his favorite things to do. So just know that's a lot of good stuff that happens with that organization as well. So cool that you're involved in that. Lester, did you all-star game out of high school or anything like that?
No, not me. I just, I had some buddies who went out to it. It was cool. I was there with them. I kind of had a chance to kind of watch from afar, and it's good stuff. I mean, the stuff that the Shriners do, I mean, that's just, it's kind of lost in the game, but the fact that the Shriners are doing their thing, it's just, it's a great organization as well.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we're going to do one more, and then we're going to let Greg go, I don't know, grab a drink or whatever Greg's going to do and get out of here for the night. But
I'll tell you what, after last night and yesterday, I'm going to bed. I got to tell you, I was supposed to have a flight out of Vegas yesterday at like 11:15 or something like that. We're on the plane, like 5 minutes from takeoff. They cancel the flight.
Oh.
And the reason being is, everybody's seen I was on American, and everything that was happening in Dallas with those ice storms was affecting the whole system with American Airlines. And they didn't have crews, or they had partial crews and they didn't have a whole crew. So they couldn't fly flights. So they switched me. That flight gets canceled. There's another flight leaving an hour from then to Phoenix. So they put me on that flight to connect to a flight to Chicago. So I was supposed to get in like at 8:00 or 9 o'clock last night. So I get to Phoenix, but the second flight is delayed because it's coming from Dallas and it can't get out of Dallas because of the ice storm. So it finally does get out of Dallas. It's in the air. And then we're supposed to leave at 8:30 last night. At 7:45, they cancel it because they don't have a crew. So luckily I was right at the desk when that happened, like 5 feet away. And so I first in line, she goes, there's another flight I can get you on in Chicago. It's leaving in about 10 minutes, but you're going to have to do some running to get over there. I go, okay. So they get me on that. Of course, my bags don't make it, but I didn't get home to my house until almost 2:00 this morning. And then my bags finally got here this afternoon. So I'm beat.
All right. Well, I lied. I'm gonna get two more out of you. So first one, What do you think of the tight end class? Have you done any work on that?
Yeah, I have not a lot because I don't see it as a big need. But everybody I talk to likes the tight end class, thinks it's pretty good. There's not that guy that's going to go, like Atlanta took in the top 5. Not a guy like that, but there's a lot of guys that are going to come into the league and play right away.
So do you see Cole Kmet as a classic inline Y? You think he kind of gives them a flexibility? I mean, he's a good athlete.
He's a good athlete.
We haven't seen that much with the Bears, though.
I don't think Nagy used him right. And then if you look and if you talk to people within the Bears organization, it took everybody. Let me back up a little bit. That offense, I have a good friend who works for the Rams, and it's the same offense, pretty much the same. And it started with Shanahan, when he was down in Atlanta. Shanahan goes out to San Francisco. Well, before that, he was in Washington. He's got McVay with him in Washington, LaFleur's with him in Washington. Some of those guys go down to Atlanta. It's all pretty much Shanahan's offense. Okay, terminology is all the same. How they run it, the run game is an outside zone type scheme. So, but anyway, this friend of mine with the Rams has been, since he's been there longer than McVay, so he's been in that system as long as McVay has been there. And when they made the Claypool trade, he called me and he goes, I hope you guys aren't thinking he's going to help you right away. He goes, because this offense is a bitch. He goes, it takes a long time for receivers to get acclimated. And a lot of it is just the side adjustments that they have to make on the move. And so he goes, you're going to see his production next year, not this year, because it's mid-season. But I think when you look at the offense as a whole, because everybody came from somewhere else, Mooney and Kmet and Fields were the only guys that played together a year ago.
Yeah.
As far as the skill guys. And so there wasn't a connect with everybody. And the second half of the season, you saw the numbers improve, and then some of the guys were getting beat up. Fields got hurt a little bit, and he has the shoulder problem, and then Claypool gets hurt, Mooney gets hurt and stuff. So again, I think you're going to see this offense be a lot more productive next year than you are this year. But getting to Cole, you look at the second half of the season, he had a really strong second half of the season.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to continue. But is he a Y or a move guy? He's a Y. And to me, Ys are invaluable because nobody in college plays the Y. So nobody can block. And so most of the guys that you're getting are move guys. And most of those guys can't block worth a damn. So, it to me is a valuable commodity. And he's never going to be like Kelsey or anybody like that because he's just, he's not that kind of athlete. But he can be damn good.
Yeah, I think a lot of Bears fans that they look at the top tight ends around the league and that's what they want, but that's just not who Cole Kmet is.
That's not what he is.
And that's fine. If he's a 50, 60 catch guy for you, his blocking has been getting better, as his career has gone on. I think that's what you want. And, he's up for an extension this year. And that would not surprise me to see, Ryan Poles, give him a new deal because, he does seem like he's going to be a fit for this team long term.
Oh, I think the people in Hallis Hall really like him too.
A lot of Golden Domers, but one more for you. We got a super chat from Ron, and thank you, Ron. We appreciate that. His question is, do you think it's more important, the O-line or the D-line? And I think I can maybe ask it this way as well. Where would you start if you're building a team from scratch? Would you try to put more of your resources into building an offensive line, building around your young quarterback, or would you attack the other team's quarterback and really pound into that defensive line?
Well, if I'm starting a team from scratch, I'm doing both. That's where it starts there. Take care of your offensive line, your defensive line, get a quarterback. You got a chance. And then, start from the inside out. With this team.
Trench tribute. Folks, that's why we start in the trenches every show.
That's what we got, yeah.
With this team, based on, and everybody says you got to have protection. I think there's some young guys on that offensive line. They're going to end up being pretty good players. I think, Braxton Jones, in my opinion, was a steal. He's got some natural traits that very few have. Now, he's not the best at anchoring, but part of that, you look at where he came from. He's an FCS level player, and he didn't play at a good FCS. He played at a low level FCS player. Never was in an NFL type weight program. He's got to develop his lower body, and you're going to see a totally different player next year because he's going to have a full off season to do that. You know, a lot of these kids don't know what they don't know what they don't know. They don't know their weaknesses. He could be a hard worker on the way. He did like 26 or 27 reps at the bench at the combine. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
But how much work was he doing on his lower body? And is that his fault? Because, you know, of the coaching he had at Southern Utah. But when you look at his, you know, his arm length, the way he moves around, his run blocking, he's got all that. He just got to get stronger in his hips and his quads, hamstrings. And when he does that, you know, the problem he had with anchoring is going to go away.
Good stuff. Well, Greg, we're going to let you go to bed. We appreciate all the time that you have taken with us today, and kind of a peek behind the curtain of a cool all-star game experience and as a scout and what we can expect moving forward. So really appreciate the time.
Hey, well, thanks for having me. Anytime.
Thank you much.
Okay, guys.
Thanks.
Talk to
We'll
you
see you
later.
next time.